Series of having special guests come, guys. We have a very special guest today. This is Mr. Davis. Okay, Mr. Davis is from Newtown, Connecticut, and he now lives in Branford, kind of near me. You know where Branford is? It's over by the shore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Branford. Okay, he speaks to a lot of youths, middle school, high schools, some colleges. He goes around the country. Put it that way. Okay. In high school, he had a difficult time, but he's using his sharing those experiences to inspire others. Have you ever heard of something you cared about deeply, like a goal, project, or an activity? He's going to be talking today, guys, about goal setting and setting goals. Okay, he's going to. I think you'll like it. I'm going to start off with a video. Okay, so without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Davis.
Wait until like 2 minutes in, I'll put the video on.
Oh,
If that's okay.
you want to put the video on now?
You think it's better? You want to do it now?
You're
2 minutes in.
I was thinking like 2 minutes in, and then we'll
Okay.
throw the video up if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Davis.
So as you heard, today I'll be discussing goals, which is very important. But before we go into that, we'll discuss it, we'll get some great ideas from all of you. I feel compelled to share something with you that literally transformed my life. What does it take for you to make a change? Think about it. Heartbreak?
Hard work.
Hard work. That's a good one. Whether it's a small change or a large change, what event in your life and someone else's life does it take for you to make a change? Any ideas that come to mind?
Takes you.
Like a big event happening in your life or something?
Yes, that's good. Any other thoughts? Yeah, those are very good answers. On a big event, do you have something? Yeah, he really hit the nail on the head though. It's really something profound, something that involves you, but also realize in your mind, I need to make a change. Now when I was in high school, I thought when I was getting treated poorly by other people, whether that be girls or people who I thought were my friends, I thought I had it bad. I thought maybe I had it bad when I was on sports teams and coaches were not turning out the way I thought they would, and they treated me and other people that I knew very horribly. I thought I had it bad. I thought I had it bad when I had to go at one point several days without eating because I was traveling and funds ran out, no one was able to help me. That's a story for an entirely different day, but yeah, when that happened, when I was struggling, fending for my life, not able to eat food for a number of days, longer than an entire weekend, I was struggling. But what I'm about to share trumps anything I just mentioned. This one event caused me to realize how precious our lives are. That even the smallest tiny things that we do daily have huge impacts. And I didn't know that in high school. I wish someone would have told me that. Yeah, speaking can be scary at times, but I know that I went through a certain set of experiences, and if you can learn from my mistakes, if you can learn from what I'm about to share with you, then it's worth it. Because I wish to God someone would have said this to me when I was your age.
Come to the main office.
And all of you are fantastic. I was talking to several of you before the meeting, and you all have so much inside of you that makes me know for a fact that this is the perfect group for me to be speaking to right now. I was living in Baltimore, Maryland, right in the heart of Baltimore. You may have heard of it recently. It's in the news. Riots have been going on. And I was driving my car, and I get a call from my father on the phone. And he says, one of those crazy shootings happened. And I was like, that's horrible. That's horrible news. And I kind of was trying to focus on the road, but I had to pull off to the side to talk to him because my mind, and I was like, well, this didn't happen to anyone we know, did it? He said, it did. It happened to your mother's students at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I grew up on the Sandy Hook side of Newtown, Connecticut. Sunnyview Terrace, if you Google it, it's right directly up from the firehouse, and I was about a 60-second walk from Sandy Hook Elementary School. My dad proceeded to tell me that 20 of my mother's students were murdered, several faculty and staff were also killed. I couldn't believe it. I got out of my car, and I was in one of the worst parts of Baltimore. There are thugs, there are gangs. I almost felt like I couldn't go on. I just got the news that these 6-year-old children were killed. 6 and 7. How would you feel if the siblings of your friends got killed? How would you feel if someone in your family member got killed? I remember walking through the worst part of Baltimore. It has not only one of the worst crime rates and drug abuse rates, and I would never ever do drugs, but this place does have it, in not only the USA, but in the world. I grew up in Newtown, as you know, which is pretty close to Bridgeport, and Baltimore has a worse crime rate than Bridgeport. I was so strucken by this news. I remember I was shaking, I was walking down the street, and there were people looking at me funny, like they knew I didn't belong there, and I didn't care. I was so upset because these children died at my old elementary school, and they were my mother's students at St. Hook Elementary School. And I learned all these strategies about how to contain my emotions, but in that moment I almost lost control, and I didn't. Because there was some tiny spark that went inside me that said, if you can just somehow get through it, maybe you can share this in the future and have it inspire other people to not make the same mistakes you did. What mistake am I talking about? The mistake of going through high school and letting other people dictate to me what to do with my life, letting people bully me and push me around, letting people make fun of me, embarrass my friends, and not standing up for myself. This story has a very happy ending, but you are all incredibly talented, special high schoolers to be in this group right now, and I want to share with you that moment so that we can move forward into goals, because this event caused me to realize you have to go after your goals because you never know what day is your last. Did those 6 and 7-year-old children wake up that morning knowing it would be their last day on the planet ever? 6 years old. But please run the video clip. We're just going to watch a 1-minute clip from this video.
And all students and faculty in the school.
It takes an agonizing hour before it becomes clear just what's taking place inside the school. Next come ominous signs.
I'm sorry.
And
I don't know why it's not making sound.
Check the volume.
Did you hit something?
That cord, is that cord
You might have hit the
loose?
cord.
Is that cord loose? Oh yeah, it is, it's not all the way in.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
thank you for catching that.
Any and all students and faculty in the school.
it takes an agonizing hour before it becomes clear just what's taking place inside the school. Next come ominous signs. Ambulances are called, stretchers set up. By 10:30 a.m., police and teachers escort groups of traumatized students out of the school. Kids who give the first indications of the terrible scene inside.
Kids were crying, not really like screaming, but they're all huddling together and they felt so sick. We all put our hands on other people's shoulders, and then our teacher held the first person's hand and she let us out.
Did you keep your eyes closed?
Yes.
The whole time?
Mm-hmm.
And when you opened them, where were you?
We were walking down to the fire station.
The children are taken to the fire department where frantic parents swarm, desperate to find out if their kids are safe.
And it was terrifying. I'm still terrified. I think I'm still in shock about it all. I still don't know everything that happens. You're rushing over here and you can't get to where you need to go, and you have to park down here and walk.
When a son or daughter is found, the relief is immense.
I was so happy. I just hugged.
What goes through your mind when you see her?
Oh my God, this is the best day of my life, the worst day of my life, just gratefulness. Gratefulness. I mean, the tears come to your eyes immediately when you know that your child's okay.
But too many families aren't as lucky. Minutes drag by, no answers on what's going on inside the school. As news trickles out, the worst becomes obvious.
The worst does become very obvious. There were some parents who were happy to find that their children made it, but there were 20 children, 6 and 7 years old, who were shot and killed. And that firehouse where they were sheltering the children is right where I grew up. I grew up on Sunnyview Terrace directly up from there. That's the tragedy that I felt compelled to share with you before going into these goal-setting strategies. Because yes, I could have gone into it right away, but then you wouldn't have had the understanding of why I'm sharing this. Why do I feel compelled to share this? Because people don't really teach goal setting in middle school, high school, or even beyond high school, and even some colleges. So the strategies that I'm going to give you, and we'll discuss this and get ideas flowing, are incredibly valuable. They've benefited people exactly your age, and if you actually implement these strategies, and I am not one to ever overpromise anything, but if you actually process even one or two small kernels of these goal-setting strategies from what we're going to talk about, it will change your life. It will put you ahead of the curve. It will benefit you for the rest of the life, of your entire life. 97% of people in the country and world don't know these tips. One more time, why am I saying this before we go into it? Because you never know which day is your last, ever. And after this happened, I realized it was time for me to make a change. I asked you in the beginning, and several of you gave excellent responses about ways that you can change your own life, events that happen. When this event happened, I realized I was living a lie. I was living a lie because I was putting things off, and I said, someday I'll do it, someday. And my childhood dream when I was walking the schools of Sandy Hook Elementary School, when I was walking the hallways, my childhood dream was to write a book. And I was so worried about what people thought of me that I didn't do it, so I limited myself. I was terrified about what my friends would think and what my family would think. And for years I held myself back. So please learn from my mistakes. I wish someone would have shared this with me and saved me 7 years of agony. I cared so much about what other people thought to me, it was debilitating. I stopped myself from writing my book. I stopped myself from goal setting. I stopped myself from living my dreams. And then after this happened, I realized at any split-second moment, I could be gone, you could be gone, any of us could be gone. I have to live my dreams. And this is not about me. This is definitely about you, but I'm sharing these experiences for the benefit and inspiration in your life. I published a book through a publisher, went through all these rejections, and I finally got my childhood dream out from Sandy Hook Elementary School. But why did I wait for a tragedy to happen? That was my regret. This is the whole point. You don't have to wait for a tragedy to happen to apply these goal-setting strategies. So when we're discussing it, keep in mind you don't need something horrible to happen. God forbid, I hope to a million years, nothing even close like this happens to you, anyone you know, any of your colleagues or friends, because this is beyond tragic, it's unimaginable, it's unthinkable. That's the key. You do not need to wait for a tragedy to change your life. Don't let my regret become yours. Now let's go into goal-setting strategies. I actually have a handout for you guys. It's a simple handout, but it will at least get you guys thinking. And while I'm handing this out, just let come to your mind, and we'll discuss in a second, a few goals that you have, just two. And they don't have to, it doesn't have to be anything, yes, Eddie. Yes.
Guys, real quick, how many people remember that event? I know it's before your time. How old were you guys? 12, yeah. I mean,
15.
I don't know about you, that, I'm just
I
looking,
was 16.
how about you, just looking at that,
That's 2
I'm,
years ago.
I was cringing a little bit, you know, having a 2-year-old daughter, thinking about how I would feel going through that. Thanks.
Oh, sorry about that.
Stir up anything in you guys?
My mom had a friend who her daughter went to school. Thank God nothing happened though.
Yeah.
She was in the school of a shooting when it happened?
Yeah. The mother was so glad when she found her daughter. There were no words for it.
How many people died?
I believe it was like 22.
Is it actually 26?
It's like,
In this event, yeah, it was 26. Yeah, 20
26.
students and 6 faculty and staff, so.
Yeah, mostly children, I mean,
And the shooter, 27?
Yeah, 27 with this year.
you know, you shouldn't come.
Sure.
You shouldn't come him. He took his own life, being a victim.
I felt the exact same way, and I know how you feel, and I agree. What I've found from researching it is that he was so terribly bullied that my heart does go out to him. Now, what he did is beyond monstrous. There are no words to ever describe or explain what he did. And I felt the same way, even now I do. But I've found discussing with so many people, very intelligent people, that are saying he was so bullied and he had no one to stand up for him that he felt so alone. That's what he resorted to doing. So part of what we're going to talk about today with the goal setting and leadership strategies is that maybe you see someone being bullied and you want to stand up for them, or you don't even worry necessarily about the word bully, but maybe you see something going on that's not right and you can apply that in your life. So a goal, what's a goal that comes to your mind? And just share a goal. It doesn't have to be a huge goal, but what's one goal that comes to your mind that you may have? It doesn't have to be a big one.
Well, every one of you should be at least graduating high school.
Yes,
Right? At least that goal.
that's a fantastic goal. That's very, yes. Yes, well, the strategies that we're going to learn right now and we'll discuss are ways that you can use to move forward and actually achieve the goal. So the first point here that I wrote down on this sheet is to decide exactly what you want. Now, raise your hand if you've ever had trouble deciding something, if you've ever felt indecisive. I myself have felt indecisive for many years, so it is not always easy. It is not easy. But one of the keys to setting goals when you're moving forward in your life is to decide what you want. Now, you can have multiple things that you want, but if you can just take one thing to focus on at a time, it's going to help you move forward. So right now we're thinking of the example of graduating from high school. So great, we have this goal now that we have in our minds. We want to graduate from high school, all of us do, and it's definitely an achievable goal. Write it down on paper. Do all of you have notepads at home or notepads from school that you could use and stuff? You did? Yeah. Yeah. What I've found from learning this and applying it is that the chance of you achieving your goal goes up by 10 times if you write it down on paper. So maybe it's once a day, maybe just a quick second before school, maybe it's at the very, very end of the day before you go to sleep. Just literally 30 seconds, just write it down on paper. Something magical happens when you write your goal down on paper. I mentioned earlier I was achieving some goals after this horrible event happened. I remember when I wrote it down, ideas flooded into my mind. And write it down in the present tense, so you're saying, I am a high school graduate. And you're actually creating that reality in your mind by writing it down. Again, these are things that most students do not know. So you knowing this is going to put you well ahead of everyone else. So when you write it down on paper, maybe it's once a day. If you don't have time once a day, if you feel really busy like I do, maybe once every couple days. At the very least, maybe once a week. Just write it down. Write that one thing down, whether maybe it's a trip you want to go on with your family, perhaps it's something you want to do with your friends to get out, maybe you want to explore the town more, or anything. It could be a goal you have in school. You want to get perhaps better grades, or you want to, like we were talking about, graduating from high school. Writing it down will help enormously. The next step in this process, and I put it on the sheet for your convenience, is to then break it down into little steps. And this is huge right now, because the vast majority of people do not achieve their goals. They don't let events like these give them the right direction, and they just fall off and they give up because they didn't break it down into little steps. Have you ever had a big project you had to work on for school and you had to write down steps to achieve it, like maybe group members you have to work on, or yeah, you have before? That's exactly what you're doing with goals. So you can apply what you're already doing for school with whatever goals in your mind. You're writing down each little step along the way. So you want to graduate from high school, if that's your goal, you could break it down into different classes you have to take, maybe a habit you have to establish. You might say to yourself in your mind, I need to study for 1 hour per day at the end of the day. Most people don't have those habits and routines ingrained into their mind. Now, I'm very curious, and the high school one is a great example, just if you have one in your mind. I'm thinking back to when I was in 9th grade, back where I lived in the southern part of Connecticut. Is there any other goal that you had? It doesn't have to be something a year from now or even maybe 4 years from now, but is there a goal you have for tomorrow? Like maybe have a great day. Is there anything else that comes to mind as you're thinking of a goal? I can share one if you'd like, but I'm just curious if there's anything that comes to your mind.
I have a long-term goal. I don't have one thought.
Any short term? Long terms are great. Do you want to share? You don't have to if it is private or it's something you want is near and dear to your heart, but if you want to, you can.
I want to to win the Guitar Center drum off for me.
That is an amazing goal. Thank you very much for sharing that. I've heard that takes a lot of courage to share it, and that's a perfect one. So he wants to win, it's a competition?
Yeah.
The competition for the guitar, right?
Guitar Center drum off is a drum off.
Oh, a drum off, okay. So the Guitar Center drum off, and there's a competition. I can relate to that too, and then I sometimes will do various competitions as well. What the first thing he can do, and what is your first name? Kenny. Okay, the first thing Kenny can do, he knows what he wants. So he's already ahead of the curve, obviously similar to all of you guys, smart guy, dressed well, he holds himself well. So he's already ahead of the curve knowing what he wants. Then he writes it down in the present tense, I won the competition, I win the competition, I am the champion of the Guitar Center drum off, and he's writing it down on paper. And then maybe breaking it down into little steps. Remember I mentioned after you write it down, don't just skip ahead to the end, because that's where most people fail. Most people won't break it down into steps and then they get overwhelmed. You have your goal and then you break it down into little tiny steps. So one could be he has to do an hour of practice a day. Another little tiny step could be he needs to talk to someone who knows a lot about this competition so he can learn more about the ins and outs. Another one could be he needs to spend time relaxing and imagining the outcome he wants through visualization. Another small tip could be he needs to go home every day and get around the right people so he can be able to connect with that purpose inside of him, which is obviously through this competition. So there are little things you can do along the way to move you towards that goal. And then once you are moving forward and you have those little steps breaking down, then set a deadline. So do you know when is this competition yearly?
Yeah, it's annual.
It's annually? Okay. So that's a perfect example because he would know the date the competition is. And the deadline gives you a track to run on. I remember when I was driving up here today, we went by a track. You all know where the track is out back. So I drove by the track and an awesome stadium. I was like, wow, this place is great. And imagine that track is your stadium for achieving this goal that you have, whatever it is in your mind. You don't have to share it. You can keep it to yourself if you want to, or whatever you have in your mind. That deadline will then give you a race to run. So you know, okay, by this date, I have to do this. And then, in our example here where we're talking about the competition, he'll know he has to have a certain number of hours under his belt practicing before the competition, having spoken to the right people, having thought about it, having written it down, and he'll have that all done by that date. And then the final step that I want to share with you, and this is within the goal setting strategies, is to take action every single day. And if you can't do it every day, we talk about this, we're all busy. Do you guys ever feel overwhelmed with all the homework they give you? I know I was beyond overwhelmed in 9th grade, especially 9th, 10th grade. Do you guys feel stressed out with all the work they give you sometimes? Like it's too much almost, like you get home and, sure, I can relate completely. And do you feel like you ever have like expectations from people around you? Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but maybe it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be someone you know. You just feel like there's not only all this overwhelm, but there's expectations around you to do certain things. You can relate to that? Yes. Yeah, and that is where the key point here that I'm sharing is to be moving forward. And I'm going to tie this into what we'll go in the second half because we're wrapping up the first half right now. But most people then, I mentioned how some people fail because they won't write it down, they won't break it down into steps. The other part where a lot of people go wrong, and I used to do this too, so I used to make this mistake myself all of the time, is I would write everything down. I'd be ready to go, I'd have all my steps written out, I'd have a deadline, and then I wouldn't take action. I wouldn't do anything. Taking action is the single key to your success, to your happiness in where you are right now in school, but not only in school, in life. So follow through with that action. It is deceptively simple. I remember when I was younger and I'm reading a book or something, someone says take action, you're just like, oh, what does that mean? What it means is just do one tiny thing to move it forward. So an example we're talking about, we both are overwhelmed with a lot going on. I feel overwhelmed all the time. It's a very normal feeling. We have a lot of responsibilities. In our example here, maybe he only has 3 to 5 minutes before going to sleep at the very end of the night. He just might quickly write it down. He might visualize the outcome, and then he might affirm to himself, I am the champion. I can win. I can do it. And believe it. You'll actually see the outcome once you believe it inside. And this isn't some hippy-dippy kumbaya thing. This is a practical tip that works in real life. When you actually believe you can do something, you'll see the result on the outside. So maybe it's 3 minutes at the end of the day. That's all he has to do. And you fit that in. Just take that small, tiny action step. It will make a world of difference. And knowing that puts you ahead of other people here. Not that the goal is to be better than anyone else, but within your own life, knowing these little steps, these little tips. Most people don't apply this at all. Most people forget about them, they learn it, they don't apply it. So don't worry about making some, I mentioned this was a big change for me, but I really want to make it simple here, and I want to make it practical and something you can apply in your life. Don't necessarily worry about having to change everything in your life right away. Because I've done that before, and then nothing changes, and you feel even more overwhelmed that we all deal with. Just make one tiny little incremental step. For me, if you can relate to it, it was when I mentioned before I go to sleep at night, I'll write down some of my goals really quickly. I'm dead tired, I just want to go to sleep, but I force myself. 5 minutes, just write down a few quick goals, I visualize, and then I will actually look at the list that I have and think, okay, what can I do the following day to move this goal forward? Keep those in mind, it will help you enormously. Yes, Ben.
Just throw something there.
Yes.
It's interesting, like we were talking about that goal, maybe graduate high school. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, the school has kind of already broken that down into steps for you guys. What do you gotta do to graduate high school? Well, the best thing to do is 4 things. Pass freshman year, pass sophomore year, pass junior year, pass senior year, and you graduate high school. It's already broken down. So it's steps, those shorter term goals. 1 year goals leading into a 4-year goal. So now what do you gotta do to pass freshman year of high school? Well, you gotta pass, the school's already done it for you. Pass first quarter, pass second quarter, pass third quarter, pass fourth quarter, and you've passed the year. You've met your year goal by breaking it down to quarterlies. Alright, so when you're thinking about breaking things down, so now you got a 4-year goal, broken down to 1-year goals, broken down to quarter goals. So the school's kind of already laid a plan for you. So if you mimic that in other things that you do in your life, breaking it down into smaller goals, just follow that plan. The second thing I'd like to comment on real quick is that somebody once told me that, we all, like, when we get motivated, we write down these things we're gonna do, and then we don't do them. They said one of the best things you can do is when you write down the things that you're gonna do, no matter how small the action is, take action. It could be to make 1 phone call that day. It could be to send 1 email that day. It could be to go out and buy 1 notebook that day. Take action that day, no matter how small the action is, and you have started the momentum. Whereas if you don't do anything, you say, well, next week I'll do this. Next week comes and goes, guys. It comes and goes, and now those things you wrote down that you wanted to do with your life, well, they're sitting in a drawer somewhere to gather in dust. So, and I've done that too, a bunch of times. I've been like, okay, what's the one thing I can do? I can send 1 email. Ooh, that's kind of scary. I don't know what this person's going to think of me if I send that. But if I send that 1 email, sometimes I pray that person doesn't email me back because it's kind of scary, right? But then next thing you know, a day or 2 later, that person emails me back, and now I've got momentum. Something's happening because I wrote down what I wanted to do, and then I took 1 action. 1 action to get the ball rolling. Even if it was scary, or no matter how small it was, I took 1 action to get that ball rolling. You do that and you'd be surprised at how well you can do. Things will start happening for you.
Thank you, Dan. That was brilliantly said and hit the nail on the head. I loved how he said high school lays it out for you and that you passing the different years, but even within the year that you're in, whether freshman, sophomore, junior, you have the structure within that. That's very well said, and you can apply that to all areas of your life. So whether you're applying that tomorrow or a year from now, or even when you're older, that same strategy will work throughout. So that was very well said. Thank you for sharing. So the second half of this that we're going to go into, and this ties into the goal setting, so it's all connected, are leadership strategies. Now let me tell you, when I was younger, and when I mentioned it before that I wish to God someone would have said some of these tips to me when I was younger. I never learned anything about goals when I was younger. I learned that on my own. The leadership, I did hear some things about that, and I will say I tuned out. Because I would always roll my eyes like, oh, how can you apply leadership? It's such a vague kind of pie in the sky term. What does that really mean? So the things that we're going to discuss over the next several minutes, I'm going to give practical strategies, like ways you can actually apply this in your life. So the first tip on there, and I wrote it on the sheet that I gave you, is surrounding yourself with the right people. I'm curious if you have any examples, very quickly that come to mind when you go. Yes, exactly. That's the right person to be around. When you go home at night, do you ever, this could be with any area of your life, it could be friends, it could be, yes. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be even acquaintances at school. But do you ever find it a challenge to surround yourself with the people you want to? Because sometimes you're around people that it just happens circumstantially and it's out of your control. Are there any examples of that in class? Like what I mean is that, say if you're out on a day, say you're just free on a Saturday. On a Saturday, you're on your own time and you can kind of choose where you're going to. But when you're in school, I remember this for me, when I was going into a classroom, there were certain people, I had friends of course, but there are certain people maybe you don't want to be around, but you don't have the choice for them to be in that class, is what I mean. So I was wondering if you, and the point isn't to pick out someone you don't like, but I mean in general, are there any examples that you have in your life where you're around certain people that just sort of happens and you don't intend for it to be? I remember that happening to me myself. I would inadvertently, either through sports or, dude, is there one that you can think of?
I mean, exactly pretty much what you just said in school.
Yeah.
And going to class and being there, like one or two people that you have nothing, you can't do anything about it. So. But I don't really have another example.
Yes. Yeah, that's a perfect, definitely a perfect example as we discussed. So here's the key to doing this when you're surrounding yourself with the right people, is that you may not have control over every single minute of your day in terms of who's going to go by you or who you're going to be sitting next to or who you end up talking to because of a project you're doing. But you can choose, one, how you respond to that person. You can choose how you're going to interact with them. And two, you can choose the amount of time spent with that person as well. So this is very essential, and this ties into the goals. When you have a goal, most people will then go and they'll go right back to the same people they were with before, and those people will then tell them that they can't do the goal. And that same old reference group will say, you can't do it. And all that motivation, steam, and all those things they wrote down then fly away because they have people telling them that you can't do the goal. So, yeah.
People tell me all the time I won't be able to do it.
That they will or will not?
They say that I won't be able to, because it sounds crazy, but I want to be one day the best, the greatest drummer there is. No one believes in me.
You can do it. And I'm not just saying it. You can definitely do it. And
it doesn't really affect me. I know I can do it one day, but
that's very powerful. Thank you again for sharing. I appreciate it. And yeah, this is a good example I want to piggyback on for what we're talking about here, because you're going to get people who maybe you have this goal that we talked about, that was part one, and then you're in the world, you're in your daily life, and you get people telling you you can't do it, or I've had people laugh at me when I told them, I wanted to do some writing, and they laughed, and they said, oh, you can't do that, you're too young. So people are going to tell you all the excuses they have, and that's their own mind, that's them, that's not you. And he's very smart in that, as you guys as well, knowing that it's not about what that person does, it's about what you do. So it doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter if they tell you can't do it. It doesn't matter if they're laughing at you. If you put into action that daily action that Dan was talking about, just even one tiny thing, an email, a call, an in-person conversation, that one tiny action step, you'll build momentum. And then other people's opinions and all of these naysayers and mean people will matter less and less. And I would definitely suggest, really think about, imagine winning in the present moment and think to yourself, I am the champion, I can do it, and really, really hold that in your heart. And as you're moving forward each day, if you just do a little bit of practice, you can definitely do it. If you keep on practicing and getting better and getting constructive feedback, there are no limits on it. You can totally, 100% achieve that and even more. So thank you again for sharing with that. Now the next point on here, and I put it right on the sheet for you to see, is and I want to tie this back into what I was talking about before, in terms of, so I said follow your intuition. this ties back into the goal setting, because with leadership, and remember I mentioned when I was younger, I would hear about this, I didn't know what it meant. Here's the practical application. When you're following your intuition, do you know what that means? I didn't, oh you did, okay, yeah, I didn't hear that term until, so following your intuition means trusting, have you heard the term trust your gut? Yeah, that's what it really means. It would have been better if I wrote that down on the sheet, so trust your gut. Yeah, so whatever that gut feeling you have inside, that's not something to just dismiss and then let other people push you around and tell you what to do. Your gut is your internal little compass that you can navigate when you're doing these goals and when you're living your life and you're doing well in school and you're getting past you're passing all your classes and you're moving up the ranks, and before you know it, you'll be a high school graduate, which is an incredible accomplishment, and I know for sure each one of you are more than capable of doing that. So the trusting your gut part. A lot of people think that leadership means having tons of people like and follow you. So when you hear the word leadership, what comes to mind? Being a leader. That's it.
Follow you.
Exactly, and I felt the same way. Any other thought? Like when you hear the word leader, any terms that come to mind?
Doing the right.
What did you say? Doing the right
thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's very
So
very good
being
point.
an example is more of being a leader, not just taking action, showing people what they should do by doing it yourself, not just saying to do it.
Like a role model.
Wow, that's one of my points. Yeah, very incredibly smart point. Yeah, that is excellent. All three of those examples were spot on. Actually, those were very awesome responses and heartfelt, because that ties into exactly what we're talking about here. So yeah, that could not have been better said. Thank you all for sharing. So what are we getting at here? It's not about having tons of people follow you. It's about trusting your gut in that situation and doing the right thing. So if it means that you have a goal you care about, and you have one person laughing at you, and one person telling you can't do it, and another person who doesn't care at all, it doesn't matter if they're following you or not. If you're trusting your gut and you're writing down your goal, then you can move forward in your life. And you can achieve the goal of graduating from high school. You can achieve the goal of doing well in your classes. You can achieve the goal of being the champion drummer. You can achieve the goal that you have in your mind that we talked about earlier. So really trusting that gut. It's not necessarily about having everyone follow you. And then what you mentioned several minutes ago ties perfectly to the next point. I mentioned developing courage. Courage is actually a skill that can be learned. I didn't know that. I was always told when I was younger, either you're born with courage or you're not. That's not the case at all. And why I mentioned what you just said is because being courageous is actually living life with integrity. It's easy to live your life like a lie. It's easy to just follow other people. That's easy. But if you live your life with integrity, as we were talking about, and if you do the right thing, what does that mean in practical application? It's not about what you say, it's about what you do. So people follow your example. I make sure in my speeches, anything I talk about, either I've lived or I've applied in some manner. I wouldn't want to just get up and share something that I would know nothing about. That wouldn't make me credible, and it wouldn't help you guys at all. You have to make sure that what you say and what you do matches up. I cannot tell you how many people I've met in the world, and this is not an exaggeration, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I'm just stating facts, who will say one thing and then do another. That is the opposite of what someone who is applying these leadership strategies we're talking about will do. If you found that we're all human. Maybe you said something that you didn't mean to say, you can apologize. Maybe you said something that you're not so sure about, you can always talk to the person. But that's another key about developing courage. Talk to the person directly. I remember when I was in high school, it was always all about talking behind each other's backs. And what part of made my high school experience not great is because I had several friends who were some good friends of mine, and then all of a sudden I found out that this was being said and this was being said, and I didn't know what to do. And I'm just thinking in my head, why don't we just talk face to face? Leaders and people who have courage, who are developing that skill, will go to the person directly. It's not easy. Not always easy. But if you have something in your mind you want to say to someone, you can do it in a nice way. I'm not in any way, don't be mean to anyone, don't be disrespectful. But you can, in a very calm yet assertive way, share to that person what you want to say. And that took me a while. When I was younger, when I was in middle school and high school, I got lost in the gossip game. But one of the speakers and authors I follow, his name is Dr. Wayne Dyer, he says, always defend the person who is absent. And when I started applying that, remember I said before, not about what you know, it's about what you apply. So try to take one tiny little thing that we're discussing here today and then apply that in your life. But when I started applying, get out of the gossip game, get out of the talking behind people's backs, get out of the worrying what other people think, and if you just focus on, I mentioned that internal compass, the courage, the intuition, and when I say intuition, I just mean your gut, just your gut feel about something, your gut, and then you're surrounding yourself as often as you can. It may not always be in your control, but as often as you can with the right people, it's going to help you move forward a lot. Now, I mentioned as we get here, as we're going down the leadership strategy, you'll notice the fourth point is I'm talking about effectively dealing with mean people. And I say, and naysayers, in case you don't know what that term means, I learned that, too as well when I was in high school. And that naysayer just means someone, we were already talking about this, someone who is saying something mean to you. Yes, they're perfect, yeah. If they're negative or they're saying something that is not supportive of you in some way, whether it's directly to you or behind your back or in some way. Have you guys ever dealt with mean people at all? You like? Yeah. Yes, and you're probably very skilled at dealing with mean people. Do you find that our kids in the hallways mean sometimes, or does that not go on as much as it used to? I mean, I know when I was in high school.
Here's my cure for that.
It's going on still? Yeah.
My cure.
Headphones, yeah. It's a reality. That is an absolute reality of not only school. Why this is important, we're discussing it right now, is because it's not only about what you're doing right now in school. You're going to be dealing with mean people your whole life. That's when it caused me to start applying this, because I used to think, oh, I'll just get away from that person, or oh, I can avoid that problem, or oh, I don't have to do that. I'll just finish school and move on. But whether you're doing a project, whether you're with friends, maybe you're playing a fun little sport on the side, maybe you're doing something after school, there are always going to be mean people. Not that most people are bad, but you're going to get some mean people here and there. How do you deal with them? How do you get past them? The first thing to remember is when someone is saying something mean to you, that you don't have to be mean back. That is, again, something that took me a very long time to learn. It's not easy. It is not easy. But they're egging you on. They want to get a reaction out of you. You can be very calm. Just be assertively calm. And you can just say, okay, that's your opinion. And then it kind of just flows right through you to realize that, you could say, well, that may be. That's and then they'll go, wow, I'm not getting a reaction out of this person. And you're just calmly kind. And you're still assertive, you're still standing up for yourself, but you're not being mean to them back. You're not overreacting. So if you just remain calm, then you'll find that their anger and tension will flow through you. So they're being mean to you, they're saying a comment, you just realize that their opinion doesn't matter at all. And you don't have to say it that way to get a rise out of them, but you could just be like, okay, you could be like, that's your opinion. You could, be like, just be very calm and let those comments shrug through your shoulders directly. Now, if there is someone who is being mean over and over again and it becomes a problem, that's when you either A, confront the person directly and say this has to stop, or B, that's when you talk to a teacher, a guidance counselor, an administrator to solve someone who's being mean over and over again. But what I've found is when you tell the person directly, very calmly though, not in a mean way, because if you're mean, they're gonna keep going. In a very calm way, this isn't affecting you. Yeah, it's not working, they'll move right on. Have you felt that way before? Yeah. Yes, exactly. And that's another great point, because this actually works in reality when someone is being that way to you, and you're applying these strategies. You're being a leader. You have goals. You're being yourself, but you find people are still not really nice. Let it flow through you. Don't let it stop you. You don't have to share your goal with them. Share your goal with someone who cares deeply about what you're doing. Share your goal with a close friend or someone, or even keep it private if you don't want to share it with anybody. But when you have that, it's going to really allow it to flow right through you. And then the final point that I want to mention is, and this is within the leadership tying to the goals, is the vision. Developing a vision. All leaders have a vision. Now, this is another thing that I'm going to share within a practical tip, like a practical way you can actually have a vision in your life. And that is to connect with what matters to you. In the example you mentioned, what matters to you is, playing the guitar, the drums, I'm sorry. Playing the drums, I keep on saying guitar. Playing the drums in the competition, and of course applying that in your life. When you're connecting what matters to you, then your vision will flow natural. Have you ever heard of the term vision? Like, when I say the word vision, what comes to mind?
What you want to see.
Yes,
Like-
that exactly.
Picturing something.
Yes, yeah, like a visualizing it. Yeah, for example, winning the competition. Yeah. Any other things that come to mind?
Imagining
Yes. And that's really the key, that when you have your vision of finishing high school, that's a vision you can put into practice each day. The vision you're imagining, okay, I'm a high school graduate, and then each day you can have a little tip, a little trick that you're doing. Okay, I'm going to do this assignment, I'm going to work hard for this class, and those little tiny changes will get you to your goal. Having that vision is essential to your life. So, tying this all together now, and thank you for the feedback, the comments as we've been going here throughout it, it's been great. Tying this all together, I had the intro, and I mentioned the goals, and I mentioned the leadership strategies. What's the big picture here? What are we getting at? What was my first point off the bat? You don't need to wait for a tragedy to happen to apply these. You can apply them right now. You can apply them in 5 minutes from now. You can apply them tomorrow morning. You can apply them tonight. You don't have to wait for some crazy, awful, absurd thing to happen to apply this. Remember that, because don't fall into the habit, as Dan was excellently mentioning before, of, oh, next week, because next week comes and goes. You don't think in even terms of, the vision is great. You have your vision, but then think in terms of, what can I do today? What can I do right now? What can I practice? What can I, even if it's just to yourself, maybe you don't necessarily have everyone around you in the hallways cheering you on. That's fine. That doesn't even matter, because their thoughts and opinions only affect them, not you. All that matters is, are you taking that little tiny action step every day? And then that's where everything will follow. You'll decide what you want, you'll write it down, you'll start getting around the right people, you'll be living life with more courage too as well. Because remember what we talked about with the courage, it's also about being a person